earlier, and there's actually a comment if you'd like to respond about this is going to show up on screen. Can you read that, or would you like me to read it out loud?
As a father, I'd like to connect with my 5-year-old boy better, but he's so dang busy. What's the best way to connect with a frenetic child? I would start with, I don't know if he's on any electronics, because first of all, that is messing with his brain, the bright colors and the bright lights. But to get more connected, when the child goes, "Hey, Dad," every single time, everything stops. And I even knew a really busy businessman, and he actually would stop and, okay, that's the most important thing. And well, I got all these other things going on. Well, maybe we're too busy if the most important person is that one right in front of us. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that would be helpful, but maybe I got that right sometimes with my kids. I had this little thing with my kids, because I, at one point, was a vice president of a company over all these sales teams and speakers. And I told my kids, call me. If I can answer, I will. I'll get right back to you if I can't. And I said, call twice if it's an emergency. I said, I don't care who I'm talking to, what I'm doing. I will answer that phone. I will talk to you. And naturally, they're going to test you, right?
Right.
So the next week, I get a call from my 11-year-old, 2 rings in a row. And I stop everything. I go, hey, what's going on? What's the emergency? Do you remember that 3 years ago you said that if I did this, I'd get an ice cream? Now you're sitting there going, well, that's not an emergency. It was to him. And that was the most important person on the planet at that time. So I don't know if that helps, but that's some of the things, the insights I've had in that area.
Okay. And also, Bob, this is going back to your conversation with Sabrina on a date. I found this meme last night. Sabrina, can you read it, or would you like me to?
I saw this guy today at Starbucks. No iPhone, no tablet, no laptop. He just sat there drinking coffee like a psychopath.
How our culture seems to be changing.
So much. I remember years ago, my mom told me, you will know when you're confident and you love yourself when you can go to a restaurant and sit there and eat dinner by yourself and not, feel comfortable. And I always thought, I was like, that's crazy. No one would feel comfortable doing that.
Well, what's interesting is my mind is quieted down. I used to always blare the radio in the car. I always have to be watching TV or movies or doing something. And yeah, now I can sit in a park and I go, wow, I've missed this for 50-some years. But, that's the other thing. If you're not connecting with someone else, let's say you're by yourself. So instead of connecting with another person because there's nobody there, how about just connecting with yourself in nature and, being quiet? But a lot of us don't want to be quiet because our mind's making too much noise and we don't like what it's saying.
Yeah. Well, it's so important, too, to be connected with yourself, because you have to, in order to be there for someone else, to have the compassion and the courage and to be able to allow yourself to have that connection with someone, you have to be able to give of yourself in that way. And you can't do that if you're not connected with your own insecurities and your own emotions.
I was just meeting with a business professional, and it was really interesting how he says, we're in these meetings. He goes, how do you get an entire group to get connected? So we start teaching them how to get quiet with each other, not to judge. Judgment's a connection killer. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's a revelation all in itself. Like, what's your favorite sport?
I like to run.
Oh, running. What a stupid sport that is. Would I have just broken connection? Would you tell me anything else after that?
No.
No, in fact, you might be sitting there going, this guy's a jerk. I mean, and by the way, okay, we're going to work on that part. Another thing that doesn't really help with connection is manipulating. Let's suppose I want to get one of my kids to do something, and I use fear to get them to do it. If you don't do that, I'm going to send you to your room. Well, my child might do it, and it comes with a wall of resentment. In fact, married couples, that happens too. If you don't do the to-do list, or they could be a martyr, but they become the martyr and they're doing it themselves, but they feel resentment, and the other one's feeling resentment because you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, of course.
We learned this when we were little. Oh, you guys, I got to tell you about the basketball story. I'm watching all of these kids play basketball, 8-year-olds. 8-year-olds are having fun until the parents get in the way. They're throwing the ball back and forth, and they're traveling, and they're just having a ball, and then one of them accidentally makes a basket. What happens?
The crowd cheers.
Oh, yeah, the parents cheer, the coach cheers, and the kid looks over and goes, oh, to be of worth, I need to make a basket. You guys are of no worth. You guys need to learn how to make a basket, but I'm going to keep you from making a basket because I'm more worth than you are. And suddenly the battle starts. This morning I was talking to a friend of mine who coaches Little League, and he told me the story about he's a little kid, 9, 10 years old. He's trying to learn how to hit the ball. Well, he accidentally hit it, and he looks over at his dad for approval, and his dad's smiling, yeah! And so then he misses, and he looks over at his dad like he's embarrassed. The coach went over to his dad and he said, could you go home? Your kid's trying to please you, and you're teaching him that he has to hit a baseball to be worthy of your love. And, you know, just to get to this place where you go, hey, that child is worth great things either way. Oh, how about this? One kid comes home with straight A's. What happens?
Parents are so proud, goes up on the fridge.
So, yeah, on the fridge, proud. Let's all go get ice cream. Here's $1 for every one of your A's.
Oh, the posts on Facebook, too, now. Parents talking about all their kids' achievements. And
so what happens if I'm a C student? I'm trying as hard as I could, but I get C's. I come home. What do I get?
Nada.
Well, in most cases. Not every parent does that, but it's like, you know, why can't you be more like your older brother? So this one's going, I'm of worth because of my performance. This one's going, I'm horrible because of my performance. And they grow up that way instead of realizing every one of us is of great worth from the get-go. And I didn't even learn that till a couple of years ago. So every time I used to play basketball and I'd miss a shot, I'd go, I'm an idiot. And then one day I went, who told me that? Where did that come from? Why do I believe it? Do you guys ever challenge the thoughts that come into your head? You're a loser. Who told me that? Well, that was a coach from high school, and you know, I connected it to some emotion, and I tended to believe it, and so I went and found out ways that I could be losers or spend my whole life going, if I do, I'm good. If I don't, I'm not.
Right.
So
I remember even with running, my parents I always put so much pressure on myself as a child for lots of different reasons, and I remember my parents would always tell me, you know, Sabrina, it's just about you trying your best and like beating your personal best time. But then the second you would cross the finish line after a 2-mile race, which was very, very far and hard, the first thing they would do is give you that ribbon. And the first place was like a gold and then a blue, and then anything past number 6 was just like a dark green color. So like immediately, not even a second to appreciate what I just accomplished, labeled with something.
You know, my son was a pole vaulter, and there was a track meet where the top 4 kids get to go to state automatically. Well, this was a year where there were no other pole vaulters in the region. He was the only one. He goes, Dad, if I can get my 2 friends over 8 feet, they can get to go to state with me. That would be so much fun. So he worked with them, got them over the bar, and he was so happy. He goes on to break the state record afterwards. But anytime he was in a track meet, whether he missed or whether he made it, every time one of the other kids made it, he celebrated that. It's like, I don't know how he learned this because he didn't learn it from me, but it was like, Dad, I just found that I do better when I'm cheering for everyone else. He goes, I found that when we all work together, we seem to go farther than being by ourselves. That connection of a company, if you have a company that's connected, they're not in silos, and some of you know this terminology where this department has no idea what's going on with this department, and this department's competing against this department. No, when they all come together, they just seem to rise higher. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you have to say something after that because I just ran out of things to say.
Well, I think a lot of thinking of the bigger picture, having aligning incentives, common goals, not thinking of yourself, it's one of the ways to calm down the snow globe. You're not in your head arguing with yourself, thinking of all these questions. It allows you to have that connection, and connection calms your mind. And
yeah. So do we have any more questions out there?
Nope, not yet, but I got another quote I can share.
Okay. What is it? If we can't solve it via email, that's instant messaging, texting, faxing, or phone calls, let's resort to meeting in person. By the way, you guys, I don't know if you know this, but words, I have a master's in communications, and one of the first things I learned is just the written word is 7% of communication between people.
Oh, yeah.
And what are most people doing? Texting, right? Texting. So do you ever get this? You get a text, and maybe they said, you look nice. I sure think you look nice. What did you mean by that? Well, they can't hear the tone. They can't see your facial expressions. Even a phone call is better than texting. but they don't do it. And so then we have what I call texting Armageddon. This person said this. What did you mean by that? When they go like this, well, what did you mean by that? And it just starts getting, and then you just don't understand. And I call it texting Armageddon. The emotions are there because they're trying to think what the other person's thinking, and they're not even in the same room.
Well, not just that, since it's all written there in front of you, you can just obsess and torture yourself in trying to figure out what they mean or use it against them, all the screenshots and the, yeah. Growing up in high school with cell phones is super fun.
Well, I like there was a couple I was hearing about, and he's on his way home from work, and she's texting him, "Where are you?" And doesn't get a response. And she goes, "Where are you?" And she starts worrying, and she's getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And he gets home, and she's ready to just, and he goes, "My cell phone was dead. I ran out of power. Got into a little bit of traffic." You know, so even the absence of a text can actually create all kinds of problems too.
Yeah.
So just getting connected, guys. We got to go back to the cell phone.
Bob, there is a quote or a question from Patricia.
Okay, Patricia. Jason's sister here. Love your thoughts. Any speaking engagements in Utah? Actually, I'm going to be at Copper Hills High School, but that's kind of a closed thing. It's for their Hope Squads. What's coming up after that? Nothing in Utah that's comes to mind that's coming up. So, but I'm going to be in Atlanta and Cleveland and Toronto. I'm going to do a Tony Robbins event in Toronto come this September, so that ought to be a lot of fun. Oh, and how about getting connected with your audience? Could you imagine you're speaking to your audience and you're looking up the whole time? And no, you look down into people's eyes, or if there's a camera, you look right into the camera. So some of you are going, well, he's never looking at the camera. I don't feel connected. That's what happens. Okay, I overkilled that question. Okay, so we have just a couple minutes left. Any closing thoughts about anything we've learned lately? Any new epiphanies?
You know, I think, especially just going back to the kids, connecting with them not only makes them feel important and just can do wonders boosting self-esteem, but it's so important for us as well to connect, not just for the other individuals.
And I think if we were to take one thing away today, it's the most important person on the planet is the one in front of you. Put the phone down, get off the frickin' TV. If you're there with your wife, you sit down and you sit right there and just go, honey, I just want to look into your eyes. And, you know, I think you're going to have a lot better night than if you were looking at your TV. I'm just guessing on that. So, one thing this week, the most important person on the planet, the one in front of you. Give that a shot.
And your mom. Mother's Day is coming up.
Yes, look her in the eye. So, 1 minute with Bob with lots more minutes. Thanks, Sabrina.
Thank you.